All right. Thanks, Rob. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're listening. We've been hearing a lot about AI over the past couple of days, right? Attacking AI, defending AI, using AI to attack, using AI to defend. But I want to start by a very age-old philosophical question that's really been confronting all of us as a community out here. Look, we've been told that having a lot of controls and having a lot of guardrails and safeguards doesn't really mean systems are secure. At the same time, having a lot of secure practices doesn't really mean we are compliant. All of this really started with the misconception that having a lot of safeguards and guardrails is going to be resource intensive. It's going to pull down innovation. It's going to slow down the rate at which new features are deployed to the market and things like that. So what happened? People started talking about shifting security left, shifting privacy left. All of those are very good practices, very great. But what happened is somewhere in the process, they started poorly baking in controls into some of these processes, leading to what I call quote unquote unauditable controls. So at the end of the day, nobody could really demonstrate or showcase that they were indeed following some of the security practices that they claim to have in place. Rendering some of these compliance assessments and compliance exercise almost with no value, like a check in the box. Look, I'm not here to provide a solution to this million-dollar question today. I just want to start by saying that with AI, the stakes are very, very high. The consequences are huge. We cannot consider compliance and security as two separate, mutually exclusive concepts or domain. We need to start thinking about them in the same context, in the same sentence as such. These are some of the things I'm going to be talking about today. But yeah, let's sort of dive into it. So what is the need for AI governance, right? So let me say at the outset that AI governance is a business problem. It's not something that just the security team or the GRC team can go into a room and just solve. Uh, everyone in the company really needs to do their bit. It's a cross-functional activity, a cross-functional exercise as such. I'm going to talk about 3 real-life case studies where AI systems failed. If your company's AI systems fails, it could have huge impacts. Loss in revenue, loss of customers, maybe millions of dollars in penalties and fines, and yes, reputational damage per se. First up on the left, I'm not sure some of you might have followed this. McDonald's tried to use a AI-based automatic ordering system in 100 of their restaurants as a part of the drive-through process. There are a lot of funny videos and memes that went viral on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm not sure how many of you saw that. So one lady was trying to order one burger, but the system just added hundreds of chicken nuggets on top of it. Somebody was trying to get one caramel ice cream, and the system randomly dumped 9 scoops of butter on top of it. So McDonald's realized that things were not right. They really quickly rolled back and pulled back this initiative, realizing that the governance was probably not right. They needed more testing. They needed more oversight. The next up is Air Canada. Air Canada uses chatbots as a part of their customer service strategy, which is fine, right? Like if you are trying to call customer service these days, more often than not, you will be talking to a bot and not a real person. So what happened in this case was that the chatbot of Air Canada told this customer that he would have a huge discount because he was traveling to attend the funeral of a close relative. But when the customer actually went in to buy the ticket, he didn't have the discount and he ended up paying a much higher price. So he sued Air Canada and took them to court. And guess what? He won. So here is a classic example of the message here is that companies need to take responsibility for the actions of the AI systems they create. They can't say that, my AI system said that and I don't know about it. Accountability is very, very important related to AI. On the right extreme is an example of Trivago. This actually happened in Australia. So Trivago, the travel website, started showing the prices of hotels in a specific town of who was paying Trivago a high commission and not really the cheapest hotel prices in the room. So ACCC, which is the Australian Consumer Commission, similar to the FTC in the US, took Trivago to court. Look, I'm an audit professional, and I really love this case because this was a landmark judgment. For the first time, a court of law ordered an audit of the algorithms and machine learning systems being used by the company. As audit and compliance professionals, we've been saying that our internal audit plans should actually include a review of the machine learning systems and AI systems. But when a court of law actually says that, which is very cool because it gives it a lot of credibility and gives more value to their exercise. Now, this algorithmic audit came up and found out that there was something really wrong with the algorithm, and Trivago ended up paying like millions of dollars in penalties out here. So clear cases of lack of governance, lack of monitoring, and lack of oversight per se, which is something that really is the need of the hour. Not just that, I think as we speak, we are facing a wave of regulations. Different countries and different states are coming up with new and new laws and requirements for companies to consider. I really love this graphic. I picked it up from the IAPP website. This is a very, very dynamic graphic. If you go to IAPP website now, it would have changed. Parts of the world map that's highlighted in red already has an AI-specific regulation or law out there. So if you are a company that's doing business in one of these jurisdictions that's highlighted in red, this company should already be having controls and processes in place to comply with or to meet the requirements of these regulations. So such is the urgency and such is the need for AI governance and AI controls. We can go on to build cool apps and play around with AI, but not having the right governance and not having the right safeguard really doesn't count as such. I keep using the word AI governance a lot. So what are really the objectives? Look, every company's governance model is very different. It really depends on what you're trying to do, how you're trying to use AI. You can be a developer of AI, you can be a deployer of AI, you can be building LLM models of your own, you can be buying third-party models and using it in your company. So no matter what control stack you have, no matter what governance processes you have, I'm going to talk about certain basic attributes of a governance framework. You can achieve the objectives in any different way, but these are some of the basic attributes or characteristics of an AI governance framework as such. First of all, the AI governance framework or the control stack in place should be able to meet some of the unique or novel risks and challenges of AI. I think by now we all know that AI risks go beyond some of the traditional cybersecurity related risks. And we need to have processes and safeguards and guardrails to be able to address and mitigate these risks. The governance framework should help the organization meet the requirement of applicable regulations. Given the specific jurisdictions in which the company is going to operate, given whatever the specific requirements are, you want to have a holistic or a comprehensive process in place that's going to help you achieve some of these regulatory requirements per se. We already spoke about accountability. So the governance framework should be able to clearly establish accountability and ownership for some of the actions of the AI systems as such. It should have the requirement for a comprehensive risk management process. Risk management is a very, very important part of AI governance and AI security. I was surprised no one's really spoken about it the past couple of days, but don't worry, I'm going to speak in detail about it. Next up, we want to have controls in place for strong monitoring and oversight. The governance framework should include specific programs or specific processes that calls for a strong monitoring and oversight of the systems are in place. And last but not the least, of course, we want to promote responsible and trustworthy AI per se. I just want to put this out there. A lot of you would have already seen this. These are the characteristics of a trustworthy AI system based on the NIST AI risk management framework. We would need to evaluate as to how each of these AI principles really applies to the specific AI systems or the AI agents that we are really building. And I will talk more about it, when we get into the risk management aspect. Okay, this is really the meat of my presentation. Please take a picture, take a screenshot if you're seeing online. These are the must-haves of an AI governance framework. Like I said, AI governance can mean different things to different organizations. It's a very broad term. It's being used very loosely in a very generic context. But however, These are some of the basic attributes, bare minimum, if you will, of an AI governance framework. And in the next few minutes, what I'm going to do is like double click and double dip into each of these 5 items and talk a little bit more about that, which will hopefully help explain and clarify what I really mean by each of this. All right. I think a couple of presenters yesterday mentioned about having an inventory of your AI models. That is very, very important. Uh, in the context of AI, these models or algorithms are the crown jewels that we need to protect. We have this old saying, right? If you don't know what you're trying to protect, you can't come up with the correct controls. So similarly, we want to make sure that there is this comprehensive inventory of all AI models in the company. Uh, have a process in place where every developer is required to register the model that they're trying to build in this inventory. Every time a new model gets registered, all the security and GRC professionals need to be alerted or pinged so that they can start thinking about the risk and the controls that needs to go with that. So the benefits of having an AI model inventory, it allows you to consistently apply policies and procedures across these models, classify these models based on various risks that apply to them, give a single pane view of the AI asset inventory, if you will. And last but not the least, I mean, we can get creative with it, try to integrate it with some of the other enterprise reporting tools, create nice, useful, fancy dashboards for management out of this. But yeah, having a model inventory is like the starting point. You might be a startup, you might be a large multinational company, but having like a basic model inventory is very, very important. What will a model inventory have? Well, yeah, these are some of the key attributes that have to be captured in the model inventory. What's the purpose of the model? Who are the intended users? Which jurisdictions will this model really operate in? What are some of the underlying data sources that's going to feed into the model? Maybe 1 or 2 sentences about the development techniques. What are the key evaluation metrics that one needs to think about? Again, think of it as a high-level, one-stop shop of information for a model. This is what GRC professionals or maybe your C-suite can really refer to from a day-to-day basis to understand, have a high-level view of the AI landscape so that they can think of the risks and controls that really go with that. This is OECD's representation of an AI system. I really like this a lot. I use this to explain risk management in the context of AI. So what this really tells us is that every AI model is very, very different. And it's really important given the context in which it's operating. The specific environment in which an AI model or an AI system is implemented is very, very important. The risk will vary. You can have a same model used for healthcare, for banking, or in criminal justice, but the risk and impact will really vary based on the context of where it is really implemented. So based on how the users really interpret or consume the output of an AI model is very, very important, and that is going to determine the impact. So in my opinion, risk management for AI needs to happen at 2 levels. The first one is what I call organizational risk at a strategic level, and second one is systemic risk at a more tactical level. What I mean by that is that organizational risk of AI is something that the C-suite or leadership team really needs to worry about. These are some of what I call the macroscopic risk or the macro risks of AI. So leadership really needs to consider the relevance of AI in the company. How complex is the system? Look, by 2026 or 27, we all need to be using AI. All of that is great. But we also need to remember that blindly throwing AI to every business problem is not the solution. AI may not be able to solve certain problems for all what you know. So that's where companies really need to take that measured approach to understand where do they want to use AI, to what level do they want to get into it. Do they have the right expertise? Do they have the right skill sets in the company to do that? Do they have the ability to implement certain strong data governance processes? We will talk in detail about data governance, and hopefully you'll realize it then. From a technology readiness perspective, does the company have access to like the different tooling, different type of software, or even the compute resources as such. These are things that really needs to be considered. And last but not the least, from a compliance and legal risk, they are opening up a lot of new doors. So are they able to really, take up that? Do they have the risk tolerance or appetite to handle all of that? Now, on the right side is some of more what I call the micro level risk. And risk assessment for AI needs to happen at a very tactical level, at a model level or a use case level. I say use case level because sometimes for a specific use case, you need more than one model, right? So it's better to do risk assessment at a use case level. This is where we consider the safety and security related risks of the AI system. What's going to be the impact on the users? When I say users, it can be an individual, it can be a community, it can be even an organization. We talked about those NIST AI principles, right? What is the applicability of those AI principles on the specific AI system we are building? These are important things that we need to consider. Um, I'm not sure from a security team members or development perspective if you are involved in the risk assessment process, but I believe everybody really needs to have a voice in risk assessment. And I talk a lot about this because if the risk assessment is done right, half the battle is won. So it's really important to get this right. Speaking of AI, we always think of bias and discrimination, right? But sometimes given the use case, bias may not be your most critical risk. Sometimes explainability or transparency might be a more critical risk as such, and that's something we need to consider. So please take some time in your risk assessment process. It's really important to get that right. Um, Both of the macro and micro level risk assessment needs to happen in parallel because the output of one really needs to feed as the input to the other. These are not like sequential activities, but more parallel activities, if you will. All right, the next item on my must-haves. Data governance. Data governance means like there are several really data risks that one needs to consider. The first one is the appropriateness of training data. The most important or the basic control one needs to consider is that is that source from which we are picking the training data set most appropriate or not. Sometimes the training data source might be correct, but the categories or types of data used to train may go wrong. So it's really important to make sure and take time that from a training data perspective, did we get the right type and kind of data from the correct source? That's something that we want to understand first. Data quality and really refers in this context to more of the accuracy and integrity of the data as it moves through various stages of the pipeline. Well, data poisoning and data leakage, we've talked a lot about it from a security perspective. Data diversity, that's a very interesting or novel concept. I'm going to spend a few seconds speaking about this. Data diversity to me is the most important control amongst in your data governance strategy. Data diversity is all about making sure that the training data set is inclusive and it really represents the entire user population who are going to interact with the system. So at the end of the day, it's very difficult to implement, but yes, there needs to be a key control in place to ensure that the training data set is diverse and inclusive before it's actually fed into the models as such. Last but not the least, privacy. I can sit here and talk about data privacy for 2 hours. This talk is not about data privacy, but what we need to understand is that with the use of AI, a company's privacy commitments and privacy requirements would be vastly impacted. So yeah, just make sure that you spend time, work with your legal team, privacy team to ensure that privacy aspects are taken care of. This sort of ties into the previous slide as such. Here, from a controls perspective, I'm really explaining what are the key controls that needs to be in place to mitigate those data risks. Again, I want to point out data bias. Data bias is a very important factor. So one needs to make sure that the training data is really representative of all the users who will be interacting and using the AI system per se. Let's move on to the next point in my must-haves. Model verification and validation. This is seems straightforward, but a very, very tricky aspect as such. I think one of the speakers in the 360-degree session yesterday spoke about testing of AI systems. So testing for AI systems needs to be really, really different. You need to go beyond the traditional unit test and functional scale regression testing. You want to actually test the model. You want to test some of the specific novel risks of AI are mitigated or not. From a requirement perspective, uh, we talked about having different types of system architectures for various agents and various AI systems, right? We want to design a test to specifically make sure that the system architecture of the design used was appropriate or not. Model training. Model training is an aspect that we don't talk a lot about often, unfortunately. We have strong data governance in place. We spent a lot of time choosing the correct training data and ensuring its data diversity. But if the models are not coded appropriately to be trained in the right way or to use the information in the right way, then it's no point, right? So you want to have some tests to make sure that the model was trained correctly. And then, the next two items we've talked again a lot about it, about application security and from a supply chain security perspective. So if you are all from security teams or you're all security folks, collaborate, work with your developers, validate their test plans, validate their test cases to ensure that they are testing the models and they are testing the systems in the right way as such. These are some of the examples of model verification validation techniques as such. Adversarial AI testing, that's a very, very unique aspect to AI. Try to feed the model with various different kinds of inputs, try to confuse the model, see how it's behaving. We want to make sure that the models are robust and able to give us the correct answer most of the time. Unfairness testing, again, bias is something that we always keep thinking about. It's an inherent risk of AI systems. So obviously we need to define and design tests. Like I mentioned, this sounds very straightforward and easy, right? So I've gotten the opportunity to actually do a lot of AI system audits for the past few months. We audit controls companies have implemented around their AI systems or audit the AI governance framework companies have put in place. Believe it or not, this is one area a lot of companies in the industry is really struggling with. Uh, the reason is, as we speak, there isn't a lot of guidance from any authoritative source in terms of what should be the optimum or correct validation and verification procedures companies need to follow. How do you know that the testing you do is sufficient? How can you be confident about an AI system? Again, it's a very subjective call, but from a control perspective, work with your development teams to identify, define, and document what are some of the key testing requirements and what are some of the basic threshold matrices you're looking for. Uh, let's say what is the acceptable error rate or acceptable hallucination rate before you move something into production. So spend some time in testing the model in all possible ways before you decide that it's really ready and good to go and take it to production per se. Um, the last of my must-haves is monitoring. Monitoring is very, very crucial always. But yes, in the context of AI, even after the systems have gone into production, it's very, very important to closely and monitor them as such. So the reason I say is that for an AI system, some of the cybersecurity issues and risks are very interconnected or intertwined with some of the with how the system behaves. Uh, let's say that suddenly you find a drift or you find that the error rate is increasing. That could be because of cybersecurity related issue and vice versa. So monitoring an AI system is absolutely crucial. It helps you identify errors, helps you detect safety and security issues, and avoid large-scale data incidents as such. So when I say monitoring, what do you monitor for? That's a very valid question, right? So these are all very specialized and unique metrics of AI systems. We want to go beyond traditional, log monitoring, incident monitoring. Uh, some of the traditional SIEM systems or even your cloud security posturing monitoring tools don't really provide this. As some of you would have already heard, uh, these metrics belong to a new class of metrics called AI observability metrics. There are new tools out there called AI observability tools, which helps us monitor and track these AI observability metrics per se. So performance, drift, bias, explainability. These are all key aspects that you want to keep monitoring for. Now, in the tool, you want to define a threshold or define an outer limit. And once the threshold is breached, as security or operations personnel or even engineering personnel, team members should be pinged to go and take a look at what really happened or why the issue is really happening per se. So these are probably, again, customized metrics or specialized metrics for AI systems that we probably not thought about, and something to really keep in mind from a governance perspective when you have built these cool apps per se. Um, those were really my 5 must-haves as such. How does all this come together, right? I mean, we talked about having a lot of processes and controls. Governance as a culture, that should be the North Star in each of your organizations. If there is one big takeaway from this conference when you go back, think about how can you build AI governance as a culture in your company. See how can you integrate some of these practices into the routine operations. How do you inculcate it as a part of the DNA? Uh, it takes a village. Let me tell you, it takes a village. It's not something that the security team or engineers alone can go ahead and implement and get it done in a jiffy. I spoke to a lot of attendees for the past couple of days. When they told me about the various security-related initiatives and processes that they're working on, one question I asked all of them: do you have your leadership support? Leadership support and commitment is very, very important always, but in the context of AI, it's absolutely crucial. AI should be something that your board or your executive committee or steering committee should really have a pulse on at all times. AI governance, AI controls should be a standing line item or a mandatory discussion point in the agenda every time that the critical leadership teams really meet. Now, what is that they really want to keep an eye on? Uh, Review the use cases. So basically, your leadership team is like the league commissioner. They set the do's and don'ts and the rules of the game. They want to make sure that the use cases are still applicable. They are able to, be in compliant with the requisite laws and regulations per se. Provide an update on the risk assessment. Were there any new critical risks that's come through the system that they should be aware of? What is the status of existing residual risks and how things are going? And last but not the least, come up with some high level but very insightful metrics for leadership teams or for critical teams to be aware of. Uh, Try to present AI related metrics in every staff meeting or town hall or all hands meeting, because that really helps create the importance and helps really build this AI governance agenda as such. The goal is basically balancing safety with innovation. No one is trying to, publish a 300-page booklet and give teams 500 controls to implement. You want to pick and choose what are the right risks for your company and ensure what are the key risks that really should be in place to be able to mitigate them per se. Yeah, with that, that is really the end of my prepared presentation. Feel free to connect with me, and would love to continue the discussion on AI governance and controls per se. I know we have some time left, so any questions from people in the room or online, we can go for that, yeah.